Hello, fellow peers and professor. My name is Ian Kim, and I hope you're having a great day so far. Today, I'm here to inform you, the audience, about Korea. Korea is a country that has slowly been in the rise to the attention of the world, starting from the late 20th century and into today. There are so many aspects and parts of Korea that I can talk to you about. I can go on all day. But today, I've selected a few points to share with you today to educate you about Korea. Today, I will be going over the culture of Korea, such as practices and food, and the history of the country, specifically the history and relations with North Korea. So there will be three major points that I'll be going over today. They will be the traditional practices, food, and history with North Korea. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. The first point I will bring to you about Korea are the traditional practices. Like many cultures in this world, Korea has their own fair share of traditional practices that are unique and special to themselves. One of the traditional practices is celebrating the two major holidays in Korea. And those two major holidays are Lunar New Year and Chuseok. Lunar New Year is one holiday that is similar to most other Asian countries that do celebrate this holiday. Some of the traditions of this day is bowing to elders and parents, wishing them good health and paying respects for the coming year. For kids and young adults like me, this is a favorite holiday as it usually involves receiving money after giving blessings. On this day, rice cake soup is always served. The rice cakes in the soup represent longevity and a healthy lifetime. The other major holiday that is celebrated is Chuseok. Chuseok can simply be known as Korean Thanksgiving and will be celebrated on September 21st of this year. Similar to American Thanksgiving, Chuseok was first celebrated wishing for a good harvest in the fall. The word Chuseok can be literally interpreted to autumn eve. Nowadays, as the season of summer transitions into autumn, people come home for the weekend to visit family and tend to the family graves. Lots of food, dancing, traveling, and playing games are done during this weekend-long holiday. Another significant traditional practice is the first birthday Torjangchi. The Torjangchi is a big birthday celebration, celebrating the survival of the newborn in the first year. In the older practices, this used to be a celebration called Peknar, which meant 100 days. This was a celebration celebrating the survival of a child, as many newborns did not make it to 100 days after birth due to the lack of medicinal knowledge and childhood diseases. With medical advancement and modern technology, this has slowly transitioned to becoming a celebration of the first year. An interesting fact about the Torjangchi is that the child turns 2 years old. In Korean culture, you are 1 year old at birth, thus the child becoming 2 years old at the Torjangchi. Because of this, the legal age in Korea is 19 rather than 18. The second aspect of Korea I'll be sharing is the food. There are two parts to Korean food. There are the traditional foods and the modern foods. Firstly, like I mentioned before, there are traditional foods such as rice cake soup, kimchi, rice punch, and more. I'll highlight kimchi as it is one of the most well-known yet mysterious foods in Korean culture. I can stand here and talk all day about kimchi, but kimchi is essentially fermented cabbage with spices. It is extremely healthy for you as the fermentation process creates these helpful bacteria for your gut. A study has shown that these bacteria help the average longevity to Koreans. There are many forms of kimchi, but the most common factor you will see is cabbage kimchi. Along with its health factor, kimchi, which can be an acquired taste for some, is a delicious and a staple dish in Korean food. Kimchi is such a major factor in Korean cuisine that you can't call something a Korean meal without kimchi being present. An interesting fact about kimchi is that there are special refrigerators dedicated to solely storing kimchi. You will find these kimchi refrigerators in about any Korean household. Funny enough, most of the time, these kimchi refrigerators are just used as a normal refrigerator, and my family is one that may be guilty of this as well. In the modern side of Korean food, Korean cuisine has become a part of a small rave, particularly in California, parts of New York, and New Jersey. Korean food as a whole is very nutritious and healthy. Most of the dishes and side dishes that are made are all homemade, upping those factors. A distinct part of Korean food, in particular to Korean dining, is that you'll be given a set of side dishes for free along with your meal. The best part about it is that these side dishes are replenishable and free. If you are not wearing enough, there are times where they can become the meal itself. I know I've been there many times where I'll go out to eat and I'll be full from eating side dishes before the main has even come out. And for the modern part of Korean food, Korean barbecue is a new popular trend that has taken the world by storm. It is more than just eating a good meal, it is an experience. You cook your own meat, socialize with your friends, and play drinking games. It is something that is always a highlighted event in a weekend or at night. You can easily go around and find places that are always packed with a long wait time, showing the recent popularity of Korean barbecue. And the final part of Korea I will talk to you about today is the history with North Korea. This is easily one of the most asked about topics when I encounter someone who wants to know about Korea, and rightfully so. The general extent that people know about North Korea is that Kim Jong-un is the dictator in charge and he's threatening to nuke the world. This all started when a strong-headed Communist Party wanted to change the government but did not have the power to do so. Eventually, this group separated from the main government and lived to make their own government in the northern side of Korea. However, their power would soon come to form in the aid of the Soviet Union. With the Soviet Union involved during the time of the Cold War, the US responded in aid for South Korea. This resulted in the Korean War, which lasted from 1950 to 1953. The North Korean Communist Force, now aided by the Soviets, were able to push down and into the capital of Seoul. They were able to push past the capital and all the way down to the peninsula, overwhelming the newer and less experienced South Korean army. And just when it seemed all over, the US forces drove them all the way back to the 38th parallel. From there, the fighting soon ceased with the Potsdam Conference, due to either side not having a government to decide the end. The Potsdam Conference determined that the 38th parallel was the border between the two countries. With that established, it created the Demilitarized Zone, also known as the DMZ, which is one of the most surveilled and guarded borders in the world. There are occasional attempts from the north into the southern border. Today, I hope you were able to learn and are now educated a little more about Korea. We talked about the traditions that are celebrated such as Lunar New Year, Chuseok, and Dorjangchi, and also to the foods of Korea like traditional foods like kimchi, and then modern foods like Korean barbecue. And finally, you were able to learn about how the countries of South Korea and North Korea were formed due to the Korean War. It's been a good experience and being able to speak about my culture, and I thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.